Hey everybody, this is Eric Enge. I'm the CEO of Stone Temple Consulting, and this is the Digital Marketing Excellence Show. So it must be Thursday. I'm excited to have Larry Kim here. I've known Larry for a long time. He's a fellow Massachusetts resident. So we have to stick together, Larry.
Hey.
And I'm really looking forward to talking about paid search today. But before we get into all that, why don't you give us about a minute, maybe two, on yourself and what your company does.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Eric. Yes, it's been quite a while. I think we did our first show together back in, what was it, 2009, I think, so five or so years ago.
Yes.
So it's good to be on our second event here together. My company WordStream, I founded it about 5 years ago. We do a paid search software, so just tools for doing paid search management. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much what we're known for.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and some great tools that WordStream produces help you get a little bit deeper into keyword research and campaign management beyond what the other kinds of tools do. So I think a great thing for people who are trying to do funny things like actually make money at all of that.
Yeah, of course. So we have a bit of experience with that. We work with, we have about 2,000 customers now, so it's like the company's gotten pretty big since we first met. We're about 110 people based in Boston. Wow, it's just, I'm sure it's the same with you guys. It's just like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. So yeah, let's actually step back a little bit, do a little bit, I think, of the basics of what we're talking about with paid search and how all that works. And then we can go down a little bit deeper into the conversation and get into more advanced stuff as we work our way through the show. How's that sound?
Awesome.
Cool. So why don't you give us sort of a primer of why and what paid search is. We'll start there, and then why we do it, what results we're looking for. Let's cover that ground first, and then we'll dig deeper after that.
Well, I think that the reasons for doing paid search are the same reasons that you would do organic search. It's very similar. A lot of people can't even tell the difference between a paid search ad and an organic search listings. Like, they just change the formatting so that it's just this little image that says ad, and that's really the only difference. That being said, it is a different ball game. There's a completely different algorithms that you have to worry about. There's no pandas or penguins, but there are other types of quality score algorithms. And so just like how you spend a lot of time learning how to do organic search well, there's tips and tricks of how to do a paid search well. I think so my own business, WordStream, we spend millions of dollars every year on both paid and organic search, roughly 50-50. We definitely think that we strongly encourage companies to do both. Like, I'm not a proponent of like only paid search or only SEO, and I think they work really well together. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that today.
Yeah, sure. And so what do the basic mechanics look like? I want to get started with a paid search campaign. How do I engage with all that? How do I get started?
Sure. It has to do with just you have keywords. These are the keywords for which you would like your ads to show up for. So you just pick a bunch of keywords, and then you write a bunch of ads. One or more ads to show when people search on the keywords that you've indicated interest in, and so that's pretty straightforward. There's various broad matching and different types of match types, so that you don't have to necessarily type out every single keyword. Google will match it to similar variations with similar intent. So then once you've kind of picked the keywords and ads, the next thing you need to do is kind of figure out how much you're willing to pay for those clicks, and that's by specifying sort of a maximum cost per click bid amount. That could be $1 or $2. It depends on sort of the economic value of those clicks. And then from there, it's just you just see how it goes, and depending on how things go, you optimize. Like maybe if the clicks are too expensive relative to the cost of the service or product that you're selling, you might want to decrease the bids. Or if the ads are falling flat, perhaps you might want to change the ads. There's really, it's a much more contained workflow compared to organic search, because there's only about maybe a dozen things that you can focus on here. It's like you can add or remove keywords. You can edit or delete ads, like create new ads. You can you see what I mean? You can raise and lower your bids. So it's a little bit like chess and checkers. Like it's a little bit more straightforward. One of the key differences, like just because I know that this audience is a organic search background, one of the key differences here in paid search is that you can be very, very picky. So you have very granular control over where your ads appear. So this is something that you don't have in SEO, where like you can target, say, like just the clicks, just the searches coming from like 1 mile around your business if you're a local business, or you could target just like during business hours, like 9 to 5, like because like no one's out here to answer the phone after in the evenings and weekends. Or you could do the opposite. Like if you're a restaurant, you might want to only run the ads on the weekends because that's when you get the most business. One of the neat things on paid search is that you can be very, very picky. And in fact, because you're paying for all these clicks, I think you want to be very picky and just only pick the ones that are like perfect for your business. And so from that extent, I view paid search as more of a bottom of the funnel, kind of just cherry picking sort of the few clicks that are perfect, like ready to buy kind of people, as opposed to necessarily like brand building or educational campaigns. That I think does much better in terms of the traditional content marketing and other activities. Any thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, so no, I mean, I think it's good. I think you introduced some of the things that are a little bit different between SEO and paid search, and that's really a great topic area. So with with SEO, what happens is you will start a campaign, some level of effort, and then it could be months or even 6 months before you see any results from that. And so the feedback loop is very slow. With paid search, I can decide that I want to run a paid search campaign, and I could set it up this afternoon, and by the time I'm eating dinner, I'm already getting clicks and feedback. And it's a much more, and I think you kind of referred to this a little bit. You get a lot more data and a lot more information on how you're doing. And you definitely expounded quite a bit on, you can segment, and I think segmentation is great. You can pick hours of the day or people near you or things like that. And if you want to, using your match types, if you just relied only on exact match, you can be very controlling over what you get traffic on. That's not necessarily the best thing to do, because there are other match types where it gives Google more degrees of freedom to send you related searchers. So that's a few things that are different, between the two platforms. But one thing that I think is worth emphasizing is there's a lot of people who I'm actually going to emphasize something which I see as the same, which is a lot of people are used to the notion that SEO is an ongoing investment and it never stops, right? But it's actually also true with paid search. There's no such sense that you set it up and you forget it and it sits there and prints money for you and you don't have to pay any attention and you just cash the checks. It doesn't quite work that way.
Right. So the challenge here is that Google makes it very easy for it to continue to work that way in terms of like they'll still take your checks or your credit card at the end of every month. I think I would say like if you want to do it well, that it's really not a great strategy to just set it and forget it and kind of just set up the initial campaigns. It's really nothing worth doing. You can really get it right on the first try. And what we're finding is that a big hang-up, a big kind of a pitfall for a lot of advertisers is that they create this initial version of a campaign and they sort of just let it coast. Whereas I think they're actually giving up sort of the most valuable aspect of this particular channel, which is the constant stream of information and the ability to then to analyze and iterate on those campaigns. We did some research, interestingly, last year to kind of figure out how high is the bar and how much work should you be doing in order to be successful. And we found that like just spending like a few minutes, like 10 or 15 minutes a week, doing just like the minor tweaks, like deleting the worst keywords or replacing the worst ad in your account, just doing a few things like this, but being consistent over time, that can have a tremendous amount of improvement, like just like compound interest can have a tremendous leverage in terms of the performance of the account. Just like how there's algorithms like Penguin and Panda, the main algorithm in Google is AdWords. It's a quality score, and so essentially what that is, Google is grading the quality of your ads, much like they grade the quality of your content in your organic search to determine ranking. They try to evaluate the quality of your ads to determine whether or not they should show it. Where should they show it on the search engine ranking page? Like, should it be number 1, 2, 3? Often there's multiple advertisers vying for the same spot, and so essentially. And also how much to pay for per click. Like it's the amount that you specify is a maximum cost per click, but what you actually end up paying can vary greatly. It could be 400% less, or sorry, 60% less, 50% less, or 400% higher, depending on the quality of the ad. And so basically the way that works is just that Google is they have sort of a benchmark click-through rate for the different ads. Like if you're in the first position, second position, third position, obviously the more prominent positions get lots higher click-through rate. And so if you can beat the expected click-through rate for your given ad position, you'll be given huge discounts on your cost per click, as well as giving huge bonuses in terms of like the prominence of your ads on the search engine results page. So just like how you do work in organic search to continuously improve your rankings and tweaking the copy to the same benefits can exist in terms of the leverage of iterate, improve, learn, like that can yield huge improvements in your quality scores, which then functionally plays a huge role in terms of like what you're paying for those clicks and how prominently those ads are appearing on the search results page. So yes, I agree with you totally.
Yeah, and I love the fact though that you found that even 15, 30 minutes a week can have a big impact on campaigns. Of course, those aren't $1 million campaigns you're talking about, but with thousands of campaigns and ad groups and things like that. But
just talking to the typical small, medium-sized business. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah.
Yeah. No problem. So, but that's great. I mean, just it really tells you that there's a commitment level you need to make this work well, and chances are that when you first launch a new campaign, it's probably more than 15, 30 minutes a week at that point, because there's a lot that's probably wrong when you first launch, because there's so much you don't know when you start. But then when you kind of settle in, it doesn't have to be this huge problem, and that's great to know.
Right. I think another part of the workflow is just keeping up with the newest features and functions. So like Google, Google AdWords rolled out like 1,000 new features last year, like new targeting features, new ad extensions, and so it's part of the work is just tweaking the campaigns to just better ads, better keywords, better bids. But the other part of the work is just like oh, now I can do this day parting by, I can turn off my ads during certain hours or whatever. So like taking advantage of all the different segmentations and new types of features that they have to offer. And these get rolled out like twice a week, and it's just like I think that's kind of a big part of the workflow too. But it's exciting because it's like usually these new exciting features like I don't know, like there's this new one where you can put an image ad, like an image picture, like in your ad, like so that it really pops. Like if you're doing like selling cars, like you could put a picture of the car in the ad, so if you're an early adopter of these new features, like that's a huge advantage, because it'll make your stuff really remarkably looking on the search engine results page. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a great topic area. By the way, lots of questions coming in, and I'm going to start putting some of them up shortly. So thank you for those of you who are sending them in, and I will try to make sure the number of unanswered questions we have from Christopher Vogelman stays under 10. Christopher, that was not a challenge. Please, it's good. But because he's fired off a bunch here. But these new ad formats that Google keeps coming out with are really a big deal. I agree with you, and it's a great thing to take advantage of. And I love the point you made, which was that when they release a new ad feature, if it's applicable to your business and you're an early adopter, that's a really good opportunity for you to make some hay, because what you're doing will stand out significantly from the other things that are in the results, because you'll be doing the new thing, and that's really a cool thing for people to look out for.
Can I just give one example of this one? Like, there's this new feature in Gmail. Like, I can target my ads in Gmail. So it's not it's still paid search, not exactly search ads. They're Gmail ads, and I can target by the emails. So like if there's companies that I'm interested in like, I don't know, like companyx.com or something, I can just target their emails. Or I can target by certain words appearing within the ad, within the text of the emails. Like we're spending like tens of thousands of dollars on this every month, because it's like nobody else is using this. Like it hasn't been ruined. It's like still very cheap. It's not yet maybe I shouldn't be talking this up too much, but it's basically great example of like.
I'm launching my $100,000 ad budget on this tomorrow. Yeah.
Another great example is like this TrueView video formats, like in the YouTubes. So like those kind of the short commercials where you can skip after 5 seconds, like that's a tremendous opportunity to get your content in front of people. And because it's so new, no one's using it, and it's like the costs are ridiculously cheap, like compared to what you might pay for like a competitive keyword search like in the US on average. So it's just all about trying out these new features and functions, and it's really it's evolving at a very fast pace.
By the way, you managed to answer more or less Christopher Vogelman's question here. If you're trying to reach CEOs and CMOs, well, maybe it's a Gmail ad, right? I mean, at least you're targeting their domain, right? Are there other strategies that you could? I mean, I was really thinking of a specific person that you might be trying to reach, but are there other things that you could do to target specific job titles, as Christopher is asking here?
So this, to me, seems like a perfect opportunity for LinkedIn ads. So in general, I'm not a huge fan of LinkedIn ads because it is pretty challenging in terms of like they don't provide as much kind of granular segmentation capabilities as Google. But when it comes to job titles, holy cow! Like you can be very very specific about like the size of the company that you're trying after, like number of employees, the title, just the countries that you're interested or the states. Like you can be super granular. Like if there's like a CEO or specific like buyer persona that you're trying to go after, like this is called psychographic targeting, where you're going after like people according to their attributes, is it a male, a female, working at a certain type of company with a certain type of job title with certain types of interests. Like these type of psychographic targeting, it's incredibly effective on LinkedIn because everyone has all their job information there. Gmail would also be a very interesting opportunity. Facebook to a lesser extent, but the reason for that is just that people don't necessarily have all their career information up to date on their Facebook profile pages. But I think I would point you in those directions for that kind of opportunity thing.
So let's introduce another variable here, just for fun. Okay, what about Bing? Why is that another case where things might be cheaper and your conversions might be higher because it's the road slightly less traveled?
Yeah, the challenge on Bing is always just it has to do with the available volume. So like we typically find that the clicks from Bing aren't inherently worse or better than clicks from like all things being equal, like the same keyword search, executed on Bing versus on Google. Like the conversion characteristics aren't a heck of a lot different on average, but the click price, can be 40 or 50% cheaper because of a lot less competition. Now, so why isn't everyone just doing this? Well, I think the answer is it has to do with just time. So if you're a small business operator and you have $2,000 to spend, you can probably, because there's 3 billion searches happening on Google every day, you could probably burn through that $2,000 or $3,000 a month of spend just on Google alone, and not have to have the headache of managing a second campaign. So like it has to do with almost like a kind of, is it worth the effort to get 10% of my, like, because it's not like there's 3 billion searches happening on Bing every day. You know what I mean? So to capture additional volume at cheaper price, it comes at a cost of, the increased complexity of now managing two sets of campaigns. You see what I mean? So I mean that the people who I see who use the Bing the most are the ones where they're tapped out in terms of like they've tapped all of the impression volume, like for the keywords that they're interested within their industry. And or I also see the case where it's like they're operating in an industry where Google doesn't allow ads. So like there's like certain policies and like if you're like a certain pharmaceutical company or something like this, like there's a lot of rules and restrictions on what types of ads you're allowed to show, like online gambling or whatever. Like and the policy restrictions are much more relaxed on Bing than they are on Google. So those are like two areas where.
Yeah. So if I were to sort of paraphrase that. The reason why you might try different platforms when it comes to LinkedIn or Gmail or Facebook or anything like that is because the targeting is different, and the way that you can reach things is different enough that the incremental effort is worthwhile. But in the case of Bing, it's pretty much the same audience without any major uptick. So it's just sort of incremental volume the same, and if you spent that extra effort that you were going to spend on Bing and then just did a better job of tuning your Google AdWords campaign, you're just as likely to get, well, maybe even more of a yield doing that rather than dealing with a second search engine. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I mean, it's the summary is just that the incremental benefit of the cheaper clicks on Bing is to some extent mitigated by the overhead of having to manage a second set of campaigns.
Right. But I mean, and I just was trying to contrast that from, okay, but if I'm going to go do LinkedIn or Gmail, that's a different set of campaigns. But that's still worthwhile because the targeting is so different. And
Oh,
it's
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Like there's a tremendous amount of upside of going to another platform like a Facebook or a LinkedIn or a Twitter because they just offer the psychographic targeting that's just not available to that extent on AdWords. But although they are introducing that a little bit in AdWords, but yes, you're right. Like the targeting options on Bing versus Google are identical. Like Bing intentionally tries to make it look like the Google targeting options because it just reduces the confusion. You see what I mean? So they're in a really tough position. Like roughly I would say a third of my customers do Bing and Google. A third of the 2,000 customers that I manage, and they spend maybe 12 or 13% of the budget of those people who are using both go to Bing. But you see how that's still like small numbers,
Right. No, it totally is. And there's a comment here from Jeff Seelig that I want to pop up, and I'll address this. So Jeff, the 30% number that you're quoting here comes from the data that's published on a regular basis by ComScore, where they show search market share. But unfortunately, because of the way that ComScore collects their data, the information is just wrong. Bing's actual market share isn't really 30%, and I won't go into all the reasons that relate to how it's wrong, but I'll give just one example just to sort of illustrate, because it sounds like a very tough statement for me, and somebody's going to say prove it. So I'll just give an example of one of the things that is kind of wrong with it. Like if you're in an article in Yahoo, sometimes you see those little double underlined things, and you move your mouse cursor to scroll, and then some of those things pop open as you hover over them, and it actually opens up a search result, and that actually counts as a search because of the ComScore methodology. Not really anybody's fault, but I mean, it does count as a search, and it's actually, well, obviously it's not the same as going to google.com or going to the Google toolbar you have and manually typing in a query. It's not the same level of search. So the real numbers are probably more like 15% market share that Bing has, in my opinion. I'll just add one last note on that, because then the question would be, well, okay, then why don't people scream more about this and correct it? Well, Google doesn't want to correct that data, because then it gets into the realm where they might get under more scrutiny related to the notion of being a monopoly. And Bing doesn't want to argue about that data because they like the fact that they're seen as being a bigger presence. Among other things, it makes them seem more attractive to go use their advertising platform, because people think they're going to get 30% of their paid search volume there, and just generally speaking, you don't. So
yeah, that's great. Like the number that I was saying was 12% of the companies that are doing both Bing and AdWords. 12% of the budgets are being deployed to Bing. So that's kind of in between Jeff's number of 10% and your number of 15. I think there's we're kind of converging on sort of a similar number here.
Yeah, well, actually, Jeff had said 30%. So, but yeah, then we find PPC accounts for only 10. You're right. Yeah, I got that part too. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't read the bottom of that. But yeah, the real number is in that range. So I think we're in good shape there. So, well, cool. I'm going to take just another couple of questions, and then I'm going to pop into a separate discussion, because I do want to take some time, and before we're done, Larry, step back and get strategic and really help people think about how they're just going to kill it in paid search, or paid advertising, paid online advertising. We can make it broader. So you can have your mind percolating on that while we deal with some more of the immediate questions. So Here's one from another one from Christopher Vogelman. Is there a rule of thumb with regard to a percentage of a marketing budget that you should allocate to paid search?
Well, if you're just talking about media spend in terms of like, budget in terms of you've got $1 million to spend on media like email list rentals or banner ads on certain websites or display ads or paid search. What we do find is that paid search is as the industry it's over 50% of the total, value of money, like dollars spent. So this is not including like services, Eric, like not like like an SEO consulting or stuff like this. Just digital media buy. It's more than 50% of the money spent in America on digital media is going to Google. So that's kind of like a high-level metric. I think really it really depends on sort of like the type of industry you're in. Paid search isn't for every company. Like there's plenty of companies. There's just as many companies that the paid search does not work for that it works for. The types of companies that it works for are where you have a really defined category and there's like a lot of a commercial intent behind the queries that like shopping or looking to buy specific things where they like services where you know exactly what you're looking for, you just don't know where to get it. I mean, if you're selling like, I don't know, some weird new fashion thing that no one's ever heard of, or it's effective because it's like something that no one's ever heard of before, so it's hard to come up with like very specific benchmarks.
Yeah, no, understand. So but that's a general guideline, Christopher. The budgets the media budgets online do tend to be higher than 50%, and things like email and other advertising platforms are taking display advertising, social media advertising, things like that are involved in the rest of that. So I'm going to pop up a question from Phil Buckley. Let's talk about AdWords inflation. And how does that impact your strategy in the short as well as the long term? So just to provide a little definition there, while it's very competitive and people keep improving their refinement of their strategies and gradually their bid prices go up and it gets harder to get your or their combination of quality score and bid price goes up, so it gets harder and harder to get traffic this way. What do you think about all that, Larry?
So it's not as big as, I mean, it depends on the vertical, right? Because like there's certain verticals that are like hyper competitive, and if you're in one of them, then you have my sympathies. But like as I look at the Google ecosystem as a whole, click prices are falling, not rising year over year for like the last I would say like maybe 12 quarters, like almost two and a half years now. Like even there's a Google earnings call going on right now from a year ago, but are flat from the quarter before. These are averages, of course. Now, so I don't know like how it shouldn't be like on average it shouldn't be you shouldn't be doubling or tripling those costs, but if that is the case where you happen to be like in a essentially what's happening is the pace of inventory growth, like the number of searches happening per day as people add cell phone, like smartphones and all this stuff. Like the inventory of searches is growing way faster than the budgets for those searches. So it's like a supply is greater than demand kind of thing, and so prices are kind of falling. But within certain niches, what could you do? I would advocate changing your strategy, like just like no one says you need to buy all those clicks, right? Like like just within your niche, you could be more picky, because like sure, if the price goes up by 50%, if you're one of these competitive niches, doesn't mean that that's necessarily no longer profitable. It means that you need to get 50% more value from those clicks that you're buying. And so, like, look at like your the user context from where these searches are occurring. Like, maybe searches from certain geographic targeting areas are worth more than others. So then you can just cut out the crap, or maybe certain time of day, like, while you're open is worth more than while you're closed. So you can cut out the junk. Like, it just, there's a lot of ways to fight these competitive niches by just being more picky. Maybe narrowing the keyword set. So, like, rather than going after a word like web development, which is very broad and unspecific, maybe it's time to be very more specific, like web development services, or like web development firms. Like, just trying to be a little bit more specific, and not trying to buy everything, but rather just trying to buy the ones that are perfect for your business.
Right, so you narrow down on things that provide better ROI for you, basically, and you might get fewer clicks that way, but you make more money in the process. So.
Sure, or even just, we're finding like we're shifting to remarketing. Like, so, like, Eric, I have $1 million I'm spending on paid search this year. 50% of it is going to remarketing. Like, that's a huge increase. The reasoning being, it's like the cost per click on remarketing, like in the categories that I'm interested in, like for display ads, is a third the average cost per click for search ads, and it's just like, kind of like, just like how you have a lot of traffic to your blog. Like, WordStream already has a ton of traffic to the blog, so the conversion rates to like filling out offers and that kind of stuff, it's only like 2 or 3% organically. So, like, I can just use remarketing, these cheap clicks from remarketing, or changing the strategy, following them around the internet with my ads, reminding them to finish what they started. Like, you started looking at my software, and why don't you give it a try, kind of thing, kind of gently nudging them, and the clicks are, like, much cheaper. They're a third the price, and it's doubled my conversion rates for site while building significant brand recall. Like they see, if I'm buying like 44 million ad impressions per month, like that makes a big impact on like brand recall. You know what I mean? Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, what you're doing is great, and it kind of relates to what you said before, which is that trying these new ways of doing things, and roads less traveled. There's so many different ways to do things today that if you kind of move to these new opportunities, like the remarketing opportunity, which that's the thing where the person's trying to brush their teeth in their mirror, and the ad shows up in the mirror in front of them. Oh, actually, it's not quite that intrusive.
pretty. I liken it to a dog following you home from the store, and it just keeps bugging you, and it just keeps following you around. Like, please, will you finish doing whatever it was you were started here?
You started to unwrap that piece of food to give it to me, and then you didn't finish it. Please, I'm hungry. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that's great. And just experimenting with these different kinds of platforms and doing different kinds of things like this makes a ton of sense. It's a great way.
But that strategy change was motivated by, this inflation concept. Like, we were like, well, it's hard to convert, with $3 clicks or whatever, for a $300 a month product. It's hard to make this work. What should we do? And then we were like, holy crap! Like, we should be just changing the strategy. Like, sometimes it's like you get too comfortable if things are working fine, and there's no innovation, and it's only when things break then that you come up with the next idea.
Yep, totally. So we have a couple people asking about B2B versus B2C type scenarios. So are there any observations you can make about the differences there? So, for example, is the prices, do they tend to be more competitive or less competitive in B2B, or are there any other things that really kind of help you people understand from a sort of a global perspective how they might be different?
Huh. Well, let's see. The the top most competitive searches, like the most competitive where Google makes the most money, it's like finance and insurance is number one, travel and tourism is number two, and retail like shopping is number three. So I think those are all B2C kind of functions like mortgages or loans or credit cards, flights, travel, shopping, e-commerce. So I think that it's probably something like 70-30, like in terms of like Google's revenues. 70% of this is kind of like business to consumer kind of thing. 30% of it is more B2B. But I'm just curious, like what specifically, what are they looking for in terms of the differences? Like, I mean, the concepts are similar. I don't think you're inherently better or worse off in a B2B or a B2C industry.
Yeah, no, I understand. I agree that it's a little bit of a tough question, but maybe one way to take a slice at it is in B2B industries, I'm going to guess that a lot of times the price per item might be higher. The volume of things might be lower, and you might also have a scenario where the outcome is a lead, right? Somebody calling you or someone filling out a contact form rather than buying on site. So those are things that might be a little bit different. Maybe we could talk about those. That might address the question.
Sure. I think that's a really great summary of the differences. Like those three. Well, definitely travel, definitely e-commerce are going to be direct response, kind of like e-commerce sale as the ultimate goal. Banking, I think that would be just fill out a request a quote kind of thing. So that's still a lead. It's not necessarily a sale. And all the business to business stuff, generally it's all lead generation. So yeah, I think that makes it makes it more challenging for B2B in terms of like the costs, because like a typical close rate from a lead to a sale might be 5 or 10% or something like that. But where they make up for that is the margins are higher. Like if you're selling an industrial air conditioning system with a 1 million BTU kind of air conditioner for your warehouse, that's like $100,000 item. So you can afford to pay a $15 click or something like this. Like that seems very high, but not in relation to some of these B2B solutions. So it tends to work itself out, because like the people who are interested in the keywords that you're interested tend to be similar businesses as yours, and so there's sort of like a kind of an equilibrium. Like the average cost per click on e-commerce is like in the pennies. It's like something like 28 cents or something like that. It's very low, because margins on products like reselling products is not very high. Whereas on banking it could be 10 times higher in terms of the average click price, but that's for a mortgage that lasts for 30 years or something like that. Like I think it kind of works itself out. Like the prices are kind of related to the economic value ultimately.
Yeah, and of course the other thing that's true, which you alluded to briefly, but I just want to draw it out a little bit, and that is that if you're generating lead, there's a time delay between when you get the revenue back. So, and because and sometimes that time delay is quite long, right? You have businesses where it takes many, many months to close the sale. So, in a B2C situation, someone buys something on your website, and okay, I spent the money here, and I got the margin dollars for here, right? And then in the B2B situation, it could be way out here. So you kind of have to front load some spend in that kind of situation, right?
Yeah, yes. So there's definitely more certainty of the ROI,
Right.
of e-commerce versus lead generation. What the lead generators do is they just assign sort of an average value for the value of of a lead. They'll say like, oh, I can afford to pay $40 a lead because my product has this much margins and I convert 5% of the leads or something. So they're just playing averages. Um, Although, Eric, the certainty of the ROI of paid search is it's less as accurate now that everyone's searching on mobile. Like that's 50% of your of your searches nowadays, and so people are now calling in or just walking into your store, and it's not necessarily hitting those thank you pages like they used to. So it's becoming a little bit kind of blurry.
It's murky everywhere these days. You're right. I mean, when I was at SMX Advanced, one of the most telling statements, well, two telling statements. Matt Cutts first shared during the keynote that he did that Google believes that before the end of 2014, more than half their searches are going to come from mobile devices. Okay, more than half, right? And that kind of feeds into what you just talked about, Larry, is this thing that someone on their mobile device, the conversion might be they walk into your store. So for a B2C situation, that certainly is a pretty hard thing to measure, right? And it's almost back to a TV-like level of measurement of your results, right?
Right.
Um,
So
that's pretty frightening
the,
stuff.
it's talking about just changing strategies. The mobile is worth more. So we've done a lot of research on this. What we find is like the the intent of a mobile search is much stronger than the intent, like the commercial intent of a desktop search. So like as you're looking for ways to be more picky or be ahead of the curve, like I'd definitely be pointing people in the direction of mobile because they convert like 3 times. Like make it so that rather than hitting your website that they call you directly, like you can make it so that they can't even navigate to your website. That's just like you force them to, when they click the headline, it just pops up the call button, right? And that's such a powerful option because now you've eliminated that entire funnel of like, oh, only 5% of my leads turn into lead sorry, 5% of my clicks turn into to filling out the forms. Now you've bypassed that completely. People are just calling you directly, so you get like 100% conversion on these calls. And these calls are actually worth more because like they're the people who are doing them have these smart. If you're going to do a search on your phone, like for, I don't know, emergency locksmith or roadside assistance, it means that you need something now, not like 6 months from now, because like otherwise, why wouldn't you be doing this research at home, like on your PC, right? So the funny thing about this, Eric, is that the cost per clicks on mobile are about a third cheaper than on desktop, and the reason is because people are not properly attributing the value, like they're not counting up the numbers correctly, and so they think wrongly that it's worth less.
Yeah, well, gets into a whole nother conversation. Let's just spend a few minutes on it. Attribution, right? I mean, we've kind of dove head first into it here. The whole process of, okay, I spent this money, and what do I get back, and how do I measure it? That's a very complicated conversation.
Yeah, I would just say don't take it in absolute numbers, like because the ROI is probably a lot more than you think it is. Just measure the change. Like as long as you keep measuring something similarly, like in a flawed way, then the error sort of cancels itself out to some extent. So like you just if it's saying $5 cost per lead, you're probably getting more leads, like the calls or whatever, that you're not counting. You just want that cost to go down, but maybe not necessarily saying that, oh, this is exactly what I paid for it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Crediting exactly how much you're making from those campaigns is well, effectively impossible these days because of the way the systems work.
Right. You're just trying to get marginal improvements, like over time.
Right.
Like. Huh.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, but we have just about 10 minutes left in the show. Let's step back and talk about. Okay, so we've talked about a bunch of different mechanics of how this paid search stuff works, and hopefully answered some questions for people. What about what's the way people should approach this? The mindset or the tactics or however you want to answer the question. Hey, I'm engaging in this. How am I going to slay this thing and just do incredibly well with paid media online these days?
Sure. So I would be thinking of it in terms of the intent of the keywords that you're targeting. So within any niche, whether you're in whatever the niche of your business, there's going to be different types of keywords. Some of them are going to have like informational intent, like that's sort of like web development, or like what's the intent of that search? Maybe they're looking to learn about it. There's going to also be high commercial intent keyword searches like web development firm Boston or something like this. So the way I look at it is that I try to get coverage for all the keywords that are relevant to my business in my niche, but I tend to attack the kind of the informational keywords with my content because there's way more searches. Like it's something like only 10 or 20% of the keyword searches are commercial in intent. Like the vast majority of them are informational. People looking for stuff to learn things. So I target that with my organic search, with my content, because and Google doesn't even show ads for educational searches. Like if you type in "Who won the World War of 1812," no ads show up because Google knows that they weren't looking to buy anything, right? So I try to get as much coverage on the organic in terms of the informational keywords. I then look at a narrow set of like cherry picking the high commercial keywords within my niche. Like for me, it would be like PPC management software or keyword tools, like the ones where it's like, oh my God, they're looking to like buy this thing right now, like bid management software or something like that. So I then take the high commercial intent keywords, and by the way, these are very difficult to target using organic. Why? Because like if you look at what Google does is with the keywords, they're no dummies. They like to monetize high commercial intent keywords, right? So because those are the ones that people want to buy something for. So they end up showing lots of ads, like 3, 4, 5, 10 ads, and then if you're in the organic, it's like you're not even above the fold. You see what I mean? And these are like bottom of the funnel kind of people that are ready to buy exactly what you're selling. So I exclusively target sort of like segment the keyword taxonomy by the intent of the search, commercial or educational, and then I take a cherry pick a narrow set of keywords with high commercial intent and go after them with paid search. Now, like the reason again why this works is like think about like stainless steel dishwasher. There is no freaking way that you're ever going to rank on that organically because the product listing ads, the shopping ads, take up the entire page. Like and the person who's like like the first and second listing is like Sears or something like this. Like you're not gonna outrank Sears. You know what I mean? Like so you kind of have to pick your battles, and apply sort of the tactics that work. So we use both, and that's how kind of at a high level how I look at the allocation of the efforts. The other area where strategically we talk a little bit about remarketing. Like I know Eric, you guys are like #1 SEO consulting company and everything, so I'm sure that a lot of people here have big web presences with lots of traffic and blogs that have lots of visitors. So we're like that. We've got like a blog that does like almost like 650,000 visitors per month, and so if that's you, where you already have a huge amount of traffic coming in, it's less valuable to be buying more clicks. Like why should you be paying $2 or $3 or $4 for incremental clicks when you already have 600,000 visitors coming to your blog? So like at that point it kind of shifts towards like if you're rich with like visitors, then it becomes like more of a, well, what I really want to do is kind of make more out of what I already have. I need to convert those into sales. I need to increase the recall, like the brand recall, so that they remember the awesome content that I produced. So that's where you kind of think like, the higher your budget, or sorry, the higher your web presence, the more I would be allocating towards paid search, or sorry, remarketing, rather than search, buying more search clicks, because those are that's it just has to do with relative abundance. You already have clicks, so now the focus is on converting and making sure that they remember you. Just a couple other high-level strategies, guys. There's just so much like new technology in paid search. Like we're talking about remarketing. There's another technology called remarketing for search, okay? Remarketing lists for search, RLSA. What that does is it allows me to tag people who visited my website, and then I can then target keywords, like keyword searches, only to certain people who visited my site. So like they have to, like if they search for like PPC management and they visited my pricing page, then I'm going to bid like $10, because like this is like he's doing comparison shopping. You see what he's doing? Like he's looking for other things. Like this is a really good lead. Like that's relatively new. It's rolled out in the last 6-8 months. Like another great example of how to do it. You really gotta really think strategically about like how you're gonna, like, what are the discriminating elements that you can say, like, either whether it be like the intent of the keyword, or is it like remarketing versus search, like how can you go about finding the discriminating elements, and how to go about setting in that strategy. I mean, it's probably not enough time to talk about everything, but hopefully that gives you some ideas on where to get started.
Yeah, no, that's a great set of ideas, and I love that, because it really gets down to, again, sort of, it's actually worth taking the time to really understand what the different opportunities are. That's my takeaway from what you just said, Larry. Because if I'm currently not a paid search guru, or sorry, a paid media guru, I want to broaden it beyond just paid search, right? And I just sort of launch into AdWords. Hey, that might work great for me, but there's other scenarios where other things could well be a much better use of your money. And so I'm kind of sitting here after having heard you give the examples, that I really ought to step back and make sure I learn enough about this stuff and make an informed decision, because it makes such a huge impact on the results I can potentially get.
Yeah, we're growing WordStream's business at like 100% a year. Like that's like, geez, like how hard it is to grow these businesses, Eric. Like, the paid search, like it gives a lot of leverage. Like if you need to grow, like I'm a venture-backed company, so there's tremendous amount. Like I took like millions of dollars of venture money from investors, and so, but in return they pile on these expectations for growth, like insane numbers every year, and paid search, there's a lot of leverage if you use it smart. Like not buying all the keywords, but like buying those high commercial intent keywords, or converting the organic that you're getting, or like if you apply it smartly, there's no reason like you shouldn't be doing both.
Yeah, and I do really love the example of targeting people who have been to your site and search on a high intent keyword, and then putting an ad in front of them saying, "Hey, come on, what are you doing? You're already seeing the best stuff. Come back." Or maybe that's not the exact best ad to run, but
that particular strategy works really good if they visited your site and then search on a competitor brand term.
Oh yeah.
That's like I mean, there's so many these crazy hacks and strategies, like like car dealerships car rental car companies are bidding more with a half-mile radius around the airport, because like that's where the high intent originates from. You see what I mean? Like for renting cars, like there's so many of these like ridiculous strategies that you can employ to get more leverage out of the clicks that you're paying for. Like that's really the key. Like
That's awesome. So we're almost at the top of the hour. Do you want to offer any closing remarks before we call it a wrap?
Just thanks, Eric, for having me on. It's great. I love doing these things with you guys. Have no trouble recommending Stone Temple for SEO related consulting work, and I think very highly of you guys. And yeah, thanks.
Well, I appreciate that, Larry, and obviously, well, maybe not obviously. The reason why we have you on the show today is really Larry and WordStream, just phenomenal in both cases. Larry's a font of great information. In fact, we can flash the hashtag up here from Christopher Vogelman. I'm sure there's others, whose head is spinning. And that's a great thing. So, but I really think the way we finished the show was great, because to me the thing that I want people to take as a takeaway is there are so many different opportunities, and the difference between focusing in an area that's well targeted for you and another that isn't can be huge. And you may need to experiment to figure out what they are, but take the time. Otherwise you might be flushing some money down the toilet and not optimizing your spend. So with that, that's it for the Digital Marketing Excellence Show for today. Thanks everybody for watching.
Hey, thanks guys. Have a good evening.